having me. Can I turn this guy off right here?
Let's turn that off.
Okay. This is not my department.
It's so fun to stare into that light.
I wish I needed a support group for math when I was in high school, and for sure. I remember I used to just sit through most like algebra tests and cry. I don't like this stuff. It was more of an emotional response. It just hit, I think, like an insecurity that I had or something, and I just didn't have the right attitude about it,
Come on in, take a seat real quick.
Awesome. Hey, come on.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies.
Great.
You got it? So just introduce Ms. Fawcett.
Okay, so I'm Abby Fawcett, and Miss Nancy had brought me in today because I guess we just had so much fun at Career Day, and I've kind of got a weird story, and it's only weird because it's not, it's, how they say, take the path less traveled? My story has definitely been one about meandering, a lot of meandering to figure out what and where I wanted to be in life. But I'll tell you what, it's my story, and it's very, it's exactly, I'm living a life that's not someone else's. Wasn't prescribed to me by someone else. I'm not doing anything anyone told me to do. And it's weird, guys, but I think one of the things I'm going to share with y'all a few of my success stories, and more than that, it's going to be the mindset that I've had that's allowed me to be this adventurous, I think, and this successful. And the reason I put quotes around success and I put quotes around failure because it's all, I think so much about that has to do with our perspective on it. When I was a little girl, my granddad used to say something over all the time. It was his favorite thing to say, and I don't think I really understood it until I was about y'all's age. He used to say, your attitude determines your altitude. Now, when I was a kid, I was like, what does that mean? But your attitude about everything determines how far and high you'll go in life. It determines your success. Because that attitude has to do with our perspective. And our perspective is the way that we interpret the events in our life and the way things are unrolling for us, right? It's that perspective that allows us, it's the one thing that no one else can determine for you except for yourself. How you're going to view the things that are happening in your life. And a lot of times, we are so quick, I think, to talk negatively to ourselves and believe those things that we're saying and believe limited thoughts that other people project onto us. If everybody listened to the people around them and the negative naysaying that they would say, some of the greatest achievements that we've ever had in this world wouldn't even be here. Before the Wright brothers developed a plane because they had a vision. They had this vision of this possibility becoming a reality. And everyone told them they were out of their mind. Everyone who of that time was a respected scientist or otherwise person in the field said, people aren't meant to fly. If we were meant to fly, we'd all have wings. And you're going to come across that, guys, when anytime you step outside of what is the norm, you're going to get naysayers. People who are going to tell you you can't do it because it's never been done before. But that's been the case with every great invention. Every great thing that's ever occurred was because someone else decided not to listen to the people around them, telling them that it's impossible. And I think my life is a really great example of that. I grew up one of 4 kiddos with a single mom, with a dad that disappeared and never paid child support. And I'll never forget, my childhood happened a lot through the 80s. It was all in the 80s and early 90s when I was growing up, and there was a huge recession in Houston where I lived. So money was tight, and I'll never forget, I wanted to go to summer camp. I had heard about it from my neighbor, my little neighbor Jessica. She was an only child and had 2 working parents, and they were doing just fine, and they sent her to everything. And so I heard this story about summer camp, and it just sounded so exciting. I really wanted to go. So I went to my mom and told her, Mom, I really want to go to summer camp, and this is the one I want to go to. And luckily, my mom held that same sort of belief, that we are not defined by the conditions within our life. The current conditions, like that's going to be how much money I have in the bank, how much time I seem to have, the school I go to, just all those things, the existing conditions within your life. Most people look around at those conditions and then they determine whether something's possible for them or not. They're believing that whatever is going on currently determines whether or not they can succeed in some other capacity. My mother, thank God, she didn't believe in the current conditions. She always looked at me and said anything was possible. So she just said, I think that's a great idea. How do you think you're going to make that happen? How can you make this happen? Because she knew she was spent. I mean, I think she was stretched as far as she could just to get the bills paid and the food on the table and all of that kind of stuff. So this was outside of what the normal conditions would say that we could afford, right? You looked at her bank account, we couldn't afford to go to camp. But she looked at me and asked me and challenged me in the same way that I think Ms. Nance probably challenges y'all to go to stretch yourself a little bit more. Because we are capable of so much more than I think we give ourselves credit for. So that was the beginning of my first company. I'll tell you, by the time I was y'all's age, I was the CEO already of 2 successful businesses. And the first business was called Fancy Toes and Pretty Bows. You gotta go back because this was the 1980s. You know, so big bows, like the kind you see on the cheerleaders in high school. Like we all wore those all the time. You know, it was just the in thing to do. So I made up a few samples of bows, but let me back up for a second. I recognized I had a talent. We all have talents. We're born with them. We are divine creatures, and we all have talents. Most of them are buried within us, and they will show up when you start digging, when you start stretching. You're going to discover some of your greatest talents that you might not even be aware of. But for the most part, by the time you're 7, 8, and 9 years old, you've already become aware of what you're good at. You know, you kind of know, don't you? All of you know that there's something that you're good at.
If you're the smart one, or the fast one, or the whatever.
You're the smart one, you're the fast one, you're the creative one, you're this, or things that get you really excited. You know, sometimes will kind of be an indicator, oh, this is a strength of mine, this is a natural talent for me. I knew I loved making stuff. I've always been one to want to create, you know, and so that's why I decided to focus on in that department. I thought, well, I love making things, maybe I can make some things and make my way to camp. So guys, I started making these bows, a few different samples, and the fancy toes part was I had flip-flops that I covered in ribbon and then did another big explosion of a bow at the end. And so I just made a few samples because that's all I had, and I went around door to door after school, and I did this throughout the year. You know, after school, I'd go door to door and selling these. I would take them out of money for the order that they placed. I'd get enough for a few orders, and then when I could, I'd go to the, you know, Hobby Lobby, and I'd buy all my stuff, and I'd come back, I'd make them, I'd sell them, I'd make a profit. You know, and little by little, not only did I raise enough money to send myself to camp, but my 2 sisters also. All 3 of us went to summer camp on those fancy clothes and pretty bows in a situation that said we couldn't afford it. Guys, we are blessed beyond belief. We are blessed sometimes by the struggles in our life. Those are all blessings. I feel sometimes, like something feels so, like such a challenge, so impossible, or it feels like you've been shut down in some way, you've been excluded in some way. I want y'all to just begin to understand that these failures or these moments that you feel upset, those have been divinely, perfectly created and crafted for your betterment. Anytime something happens that feels like someone from the outside might call it a failure, you know, or someone might call it like, well, that sucks, you know, sorry I didn't get the invite for that, or whatever it is that makes you feel bad about yourself, that's a blessing. I have had so many moments in my life where a door closed. That door closing, anytime those doors close for you guys, if it really does close, it's as though there's something pushing us in another direction. You know, and trust that. It's okay that door closed. There's a reason for that, and you're supposed to be going another direction. Or there's something I need to look at here. There's something I need to grow from right now. I heard a little story the other day that really blessed me. It was about a little boy. He was about 9 years old, the same age as my sons. I've got twin boys that are 9, and I could so see them doing something like this. This little boy, he was outside, and he came across a little cocoon. And he looked real closely at that cocoon, and he saw that there was something, like a little caterpillar, early staged butterfly, that was banging against the sides of the cocoon. You know, just kind of banging to get out, you know? So very lovingly, very compassionately, this little boy went inside, and he went and got into his mother's little manicure set and got the tiny little scissors and brought those out. And with those little scissors, he cut that little cocoon, and he pulled it back. And inside, this premature butterfly, stretched out its wings like this, and it kind of fluttered in the air for a moment, and then, as he watched, in front of his eyes, those wings started to wilt and kind of curl in, and the butterfly died. Right? What that little boy didn't understand is that every single time that butterfly banged against the doors, the walls, which I see as our challenges in this world, every time that butterfly did that, there was a signal being sent that moved through his body and fortified those wings, pumping blood and energy through into those wings to make them ultimately strong and powerful. And had that little boy been patient and let that butterfly go through its process of hitting those walls, being made stronger, it would have had enough strength to bust out of that cocoon and soar. So what I want y'all to understand is that when you're going through a difficult situation, when you're being asked to go into uncomfortable territory and do something that's a little outside of your comfort zone, or you're dealing with what seems like a perceived failure, this is just you, like that butterfly, hitting those walls and being made stronger. You're being made better. Slowly but surely, being refined, so that ultimately you will have all that you need to really take the big stage, to really get that job that you're hoping to get, to stand in the company of other people with such confidence because you have gone through it. Anybody who's ever succeeded, all of the greats out there, including Albert Einstein, I mean, everyone will say it's through pain that we grow. We grow at the speed of pain. So when you're hurting, feel it. Be aware. This is upsetting me. It's not by accident. It's not by default. It's not that this is a tough world. It's that this is a particular challenge that's going to bring up something for you and give you an opportunity to grow. And that growth is a necessary part of who you will ultimately be. That wise woman, that writer, that speaker, that doctor, that whoever you're going to be. But we can't just jump ahead of the game like that little boy thought and avoid. You can't avoid the struggle. So just accept it. But you can decide how you want to perceive that struggle. Back to the attitude. I can either decide that this world is against me, or this world is here and I was created to excel. That this world, this universe, this divine intelligence that created each of us, just the way we are, hopes to see us bloom and blossom. And that's where I land. It's your choice. You can decide that this is a tough, horrible, hard world, a world that pushes you down, or you can decide that this is a universe that created you and hopes to see what all you're capable of doing and being. And that's sort of where I land. I have another story. A friend of mine, now, this is kind of a mature story. The content is a little mature, but don't worry, it's not too bad.
Okay.
It's really unfortunate. because a friend of mine from college, he's a brilliant programmer. He had an amazing job at a big company, the whole bit, the 401k, all the stuff. He was doing really well financially, but he wasn't completely happy at his job. He didn't feel very challenged, and there was no room for him to move up. One day, they let him go. They were just letting a lot of people go. The company was downsizing, they let him go. And in that moment, he had a choice. He could either decide that the universe supports me, this must be perfect. There's a mantra I say a lot of times, especially when things are difficult. Whatever's happening is the best possible thing that can possibly be happening to me right now. This situation is the best possible situation that could the best possible thing that could be happening for me right now. I don't care how bad it is. I choose to believe this is the best possible thing that could ever be happening for me right now. Either I need to grow, I need to change, I need to change my ways. You know, say I'm running behind for something really important. That happened to me a couple weeks ago, and I pride myself on trying to show up early for speaking engagements. I was running behind, and I'm sitting there, and the stress is coming up, and I'm feeling it all, and I'm just like, this is so wrong. And then in a moment, I had to tell myself, this is the best possible thing that could be happening for me. If no other reason for me than to really realize how bad this feels when I'm late. You know, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to do the same thing next time, even if it's just for that, because usually there's a lesson that I'm supposed to be gleaning from this negative situation. And if that's all that I can glean from it, that's good enough for me to change my way so that for the next bigger speaking engagement, I don't let that happen, you know? So back to this guy, he gets fired. He chose to believe this world is just a difficult, sad place. He must not be worthy. He just made it all personal and decided that this was a bad thing in his life. No one else can decide that for yourself except for yourself. You're in charge of the way you interpret the events that are happening to you. So he goes off, tucks his tail under, goes off and like completely self-medicates all of his feeling. He's boozing it up, he's doing drugs, he spends the next 30 days completely in self-debauchery, just not answering his phone, partying, just medicating, trying to change the way he felt inside. He didn't realize he could just choose to feel differently about the situation, like we're talking about here today. He could have chosen to say, maybe there's something else meant for me. Maybe the store closed because something else really exciting is supposed to be happening for me. Instead, he went south. And I think a lot of us go south. We take the external events, the conditions of that moment, and interpret it like, this is not, the world's against me. Y'all, I will tell you what, at the end of that 30 days, he got a phone call from a company that he always wanted to work for. They had heard he'd been fired, he was available for hire. They had the position open for immediately open, and they called him and said, hey, we'd love to get you in here to do an interview. This position has come open, it's immediate, we would love for you to come in and interview for it. They really wanted him to have the job. He couldn't do it. He knew he wouldn't pass the drug test. So he lost that opportunity to work for a company he'd always wanted to work for. But that decision was made the moment he decided that the world was against him, and instead of interpreting as getting excited, people think I'm weird, but like, quote unquote, bad things will happen, and I just get so excited. I'm like, whoa, this was a doozy. There must be something going on. There is something I don't know about that is about to happen, and I'm just going to wait with hopeful expectation to see what it is. When things get really bad, I get really aware, because I don't believe in accidents. I believe that everything is happening for a reason. It's a wow. Whew, I could really feel a lot of pain about this, or I could sit here in hopeful expectation and know that something's going on. There's an opportunity, something's about to happen here, and I can start getting excited about it, And that's a choice. I can either choose to go down that one road and make this all the horrible experience, and I'm no good, and all that stuff, which I think is a natural ego tendency. There's a part of our mind, y'all, and I want you to know this. I wish I would have known this sooner. You know when thoughts come through your mind? There's something called ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. It's a real condition, and the majority of people we suffer from it from time to time, if not a lot of times. It's these negative thoughts that come through our head about ourselves, about other people, about the world around us. There's a part of our brain that's this ego mind structure, and it is made just to like nitpick and criticize, and it's that part of us that has evolved over time. It's that part of us that when we were very primitive people kept us safe and alive because it looked around the world very skeptically. The only problem is that it continues to do that even though we're not fighting for our lives anymore. We're just getting up and going to school and going to practice or doing what we're doing, but yet it is very alive and well, criticizing everything in the world, including yourself. Just understand that that is not you. Those thoughts that you're thinking, they're not you. They're not even your thoughts. It's a biological process that the brain just does. So this negative thought will come through. I recognize that I'm having it. Sometimes I'll talk to it. I'll say, thanks for sharing. And I don't want to identify myself with that thought and make that thought my own. Again, that's a choice. You can choose to believe those negative thoughts that are coming through your head and identify with them and then believe that those are your thoughts. Or you can just understand that that's a biological process that's coming through your brain, and it's just coming, and it can pass just as quickly as it came in if you don't glom onto it or attach to it and identify with that as your truth. You can decide. I say, thanks for sharing. And that seems to, because the interesting thing about the ego brain, it loves complications, and it loves for you to fight with it. So the more energy you give that thought, even if you start to like say, well, that's not true, I don't feel that way, and yada, 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 and kind of argue with yourself, it loves that too because you're feeding into it. So I almost just neutralize it by saying, thanks for sharing, let it go, come and go. And then I get quiet and sometimes ask, because it's so hard to do. I mean, we're challenged all the time. It is so hard to keep that positive mindset. But I know that attitude determines altitude. The way I walk into the room, 99% of what is going to happen to me has nothing to do with what I say or what I look like. It's everything else that I'm projecting and energy around me and all of that. I mean, research shows that we have energy all through us and around us, and people feel who you are. And that's what makes that impact. Everywhere I go, people will say, gosh, I just love your vibe. This energy, so where do you get this energy from? It's not by accident. I cultivate that energy. I'm not good with a lot of things. Like, I don't eat as healthy as you do over there, Missy. I wish I ate as healthy as you. But the one thing that I'm very self-disciplined on is what I allow myself to think. And that negative self-talk that we do all the time, or absorbing the negative talk from other people and making that our truth, is the quickest way to live a very small life. A very small life, which would make a lot of people more comfortable, I've done a few things in my life that have made people very uncomfortable. Because I take that choice that is off the beaten path, where I say, guess what, I can do it. How do you like that? I just walk in and believe that I can do it. Because I believe we are huge. We are divine creatures, and there's this unbelievable source that is available to all of us if we tap into it. But when we're in a low vibration, if we're feeling guilty, if we're feeling small, when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling self-defeated, we're not able to really connect to that greater source that creates good things in our lives. Something else that I learned when I was early enough in the game that I think has been a big game changer for me is that it's a lot easier if I just stop thinking about myself. If I go around, even before I came here, if I spent too much time worrying about how y'all might think of me, or what Miss Nance is going to think about me, or even too much worrying about what other people are going to think and how my involvement is with that, is a quick road to, I think, not tapping into a higher vibration. If I just think about the love that I have for y'all, about how excited I am to be speaking to some other young women today, if I just put my attention out there on how can I bless y'all, and I wonder how they're going to bless me, and start thinking about the relationships around me, thinking about you, basically, instead of myself. It's incredible what happens. People feel that. And you've heard, raise your hand if you've heard the old saying, it's not what you know, but who you know. Anybody heard that before? It's not what you know in life. Oh my God. Well, I'm glad you're hearing it today. It is not what you know, it's who you know that makes the biggest difference in our lives. Again, I don't come from great resources. I don't come from big money. I don't come from anything like that. But yet I've had some I've ridden in planes with billionaires. I've sat with Matthew McConaughey. I'm telling everybody that you might think is cool. I've been with them and had opportunities to do these things, make movies and make television shows, and you know, because I know it's all about people. It's all about other people. And when you're in a conversation, do you ever feel that feeling like you need to say something interesting so that they'll like you? Like or let them know how cool you are, or let them know all that stuff. I know we all feel that need to share that. But what happens is, I find it's more successful if I'm less focused on being interesting and being interested in who they are as a person. You know what I mean? The other day I was in the grocery store and I was talking to this woman. We had probably a 10-minute conversation. She was a real talker, you know. And I was like, But I like to walk around with a natural curiosity for things. And so I'm asking this woman questions. She left there, basically ends the story, she leaves there and tells somebody else, I love that Abby girl, she's the most interesting person I've ever met. I didn't tell her anything about me. Nothing about me. But I made her feel like the most interesting person in the world. Therefore, she feels that way about me. Y'all go out there and have a wonderful day. Thanks for having me. Y'all, you're awesome. And you can do it. Against all odds. Find me on Facebook if you want to continue a conversation, ask me any questions, or Instagram, okay? Happy Fawcett.